All right, what's up, folks? I am here to do a fun setup today. We are going to migrate. I've got an application. This is the repo for it. It's a to-do app using FastAPI, which is a cool Python framework. I've got it running on Heroku, so this is it. It's a FastAPI to-do app, and I can say task 1 and update it. It's using a Postgres database for this, so hopefully this is reflective of a lot of the Rails or Django or FastAPI or Elixir or other similar apps that some of you are running on Heroku and maybe thinking, hey, I would love to move this to the cloud if it was just easy enough to move to AWS or GCP. And what if there was something just like Heroku that worked on my own cloud and gave me everything Heroku does and even more? Because even to this day, Heroku is still best in class in terms of the developer experience and cost and monitoring integrations and overall just capabilities and ease of use of the platform. And some modern variants like Render, Railway, Fly, Vercel we're going to look at in similar, or have looked at in similar demonstrations, but excited to show you in a straightforward way how you could take a Heroku app that looks just like this and has these moving parts and migrate it really easily over to Coherence in just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I go to Coherence, I click onboard an existing app, right? And we're at this initial form. You choose a name for your application, so we'll call this to do Heroku. I'm going to migrate this to Google Cloud, but you could also choose Amazon. And I've got a throwaway Google Cloud project just for this purpose. I've got my repo right here. Just like easy, paste in the GitHub URL. I'm working on the main branch, which you could too. I could obviously change my region to something else if I needed to. Capability I don't have on Heroku. I've already installed Coherence a bunch of times in my GitHub, but you would click these two buttons and make sure that you've authorized us to your repository. This is using the minimum permissions model provided by GitHub Apps. You're going to give yourself a Cloud IAM role, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I take this link, I go to Google Cloud, I add the IAM role. We've got a bunch of details in our migration guide here about the role that we request and your options around that. We're going to make sure you added it, which I did. If I had any environment variables to add, I'll show you on my Heroku dashboard. The only environment variables I've got are my database URL, which is auto-generated, right? And will be on Coherence just like it is on Heroku. And it'll be injected with the same value. And then I haven't added any myself yet. So if I would be able to just add them. You can always add these later as well. But I'll skip. And now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to try a beta feature we have, which is our AI configuration generator. We're going to have to tweak this most likely. The quality is a little undetermined right now, but we're working on it all the time. And maybe by the time you've watched this video, we've made it even better. And then we're going to have a choice between managing the Coherence YAML file in our repository for sort of a GitOps style, or in our UI here, directly in the Coherence platform, which obviously gives a little bit more flexibility and not having to edit any files in the repo. So that's up to you. There's trade-offs both ways. We're happy to discuss them with you, or you can read more about it in our docs, but feel free to ping us over email or on Twitter or LinkedIn or something if you want to talk more about that. We can invite you into our Slack community as well, if that's a better way to have those kind of discussions for you or your team. And pretty soon we'll see a draft of this configuration. Yeah, here we go. So this is actually a pretty bad pass at it, so I'm not that excited to show you this part, but it doesn't really need this front end. It does have a templates, but in this FastAPI app, the assets are just served directly through there, through the backend service. So I'll edit that. I think I'll use a more modern version of Postgres. I didn't define that in the repo, so I understand it. I had a hard time guessing that. Maybe GPT sees more of 13. And then this is, not matching the command from my proc file, it should be using the same, basically this web command should become what I use that Coherence calls prod and dev. Obviously there's a little bit of, there's 2 commands here instead of 1, so there's some reading to do in our docs, but the gist of it is that prod is what's used in a deployed environment in the cloud, and dev is what's used in our cloud workspaces, which is our cloud IDE. So I'm just going to quote this thing appropriately, and then we should be off to the races. And one more quote, I'll copy and paste this down. We do comment these, application and dev and production, but yeah, worst comes to worst, you could leave the dev command out if you don't even want to think about that, and it would look pretty similar. This local packages is a hallucination from GPT, but here we go. That should work. I'm going to choose to manage this in my UI, but we just talked a little bit about the 2 choices, and you can make that choice yourself. I'm going to go ahead and save this. It's going to do a little bit of checking on the back end of Coherence to make sure it has a validly configured service, and then at this point we're done. We're ready to deploy this application, and it's going to take, as it says here, between 7 and 30 minutes depending on complexity. And it's just asking me to make sure my app is listening to port, which we saw my command does specify the port, and then also that I have a health check that returns at the root of my the default configuration is just to check the root of the service and return something between 200 and 399. So both of those things are true in this case. For most applications they will be as well, as long as you've thought about that port command, which is similar to Heroku. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and click configure. This is going to actually configure for the first time some things in my cloud by Coherence, and everything we do we can delete eventually, but this is going to take a little bit of time, so we're going to go ahead and proceed, and then I'll check back in a few minutes and show you what we got. Just check in quick and show you while we're running here, like Coherence on this infrastructure logs tab is going to show me everything it's adding to my Google project. The same would be true on AWS, and as I add and remove environments, this will reflect that over time. The variables is where I could edit the variables that I elected not to provide during my onboarding process. Under environments, you can see Coherence supports different types of environments, and this sort of maps to pipelines in Heroku. We've got preview environments, we've got your main deployment that's watching a branch, sort of the equivalent of if I had set this app to auto deploy, tracking a certain branch on Heroku. That's what this one's doing, and I could change what branch that's tracking right here in my settings. I can also enable and disable pull request integration for previews, which can even be limited to GitHub labels based on what's in my repo. The static environments and previews, again, sort of echoing some Heroku pipeline stuff, I'm able to use, and we've got tons of information in our docs about how all of those work. Excited to have you take a look at that and see how it's even more flexible than what Heroku provides. And then one cool thing we're doing is letting you easily set up a production deployment in a different cloud account, or in this case, Google project, than your non-production workloads. And so really providing your team best practices out of the box as they move over. Obviously collaborator management, just like on Heroku, everybody can have different roles and what they're able to do. And then, Coherence has analytics. So providing you with usage data on how many preview environments and builds your team is using, build performance, like how long do these builds take and what's their runtime for different stages, like where are you spending your time, and then team velocity. So how quickly are you picking up pull requests, how big are your pull requests, how long does it take you to merge them once you pick them up and reviewed them, and for your releases, like how quickly are you promoting to different environments and deploying to different environments, and how big are those releases. So this is fun stats. Obviously this repo is kind of a demo thing, right? But fun stats a lot of teams get a ton of value from over time, and check back in a few minutes when this is deployed. All right, so, as it sort of suggested during the onboarding flow, it took about 16 minutes and 10 seconds to complete the provisioning of the initial infrastructure for my application in Google Cloud. AWS takes a similar time. That obviously automatically triggered a deployment. I did forget to do one thing that we even catch in our docs during this onboarding that I'll show you, but this deploy step didn't work, so the build step did. It took 3 minutes. This will get faster. This is building a container. You didn't supply a Docker file. We didn't supply a Docker file during this, so we use something just like Heroku build packs to do that for us. That'll get faster as it's cached, and we've done this a couple times, but then this didn't work. Coherence does a great job of, this is my build logs, these are the events, telling me it failed, and then I've got the actual container logs from Cloud Run. So a little bit more granular in this UI than what you get in different UIs across Heroku, where your build logs are not even really easily visible here, but I think I can view the build logs like this, and then I can go over here and view the web logs here. Able to achieve a lot of the same things you can here. Coherence has this cool option to do AI Troubleshooter, so we can hit this and see what it tells us. It doesn't always catch nuanced issues like this. I know what's going on where it says UV core not found, and I'll show you in a second, but we'll just see what this does. But as you hit failed builds during your normal course of working in different branches, as you change stuff, this troubleshooter is very useful for catching some cool stuff. So it got a little tricked by the error message about the port. So it's over-indexing on the port thing, which sometimes the AI stuff does. This is all in beta. We're working to make this better. But what's going on here is in my config, I'm just calling UVcorn, and in the container, it's in a virtual environment using VM. This is Python. There's similar stuff with Ruby, like profiles. So what I need to do is go to the Coherence docs, and we call out in these different examples and why it's needed with more reading right here. I'm just going to copy this, drop it in here, and match the formatting. I don't need quotes around this part. And I'm going to do the same thing for prod. And if I save these changes, that will automatically submit a new build for me. So I can go back to builds and wait for this to run. And then, it's going to take 5 minutes or so, just like this one did. Should work, fingers crossed. But I'll pause the video to save you the time. All right, so it took about 5 minutes, 38 seconds, and Coherence, I showed you some of the aggregate analytics. We do a lot of analysis on build pipelines in here. This took especially long time because there was an infrastructure check after changing my configuration. Google, the SSL certs when you create an environment can take a little bit of time, so it's going to warn me it's probably going to be fine. And check it out. I've got I'll have a valid cert soon, but I've got a working deployment of my application on my own Google Cloud account, and I could have the same on AWS just as easily. That took about 13 minutes of actual clicking time, besides some waiting. Did a lot of talking in there, probably even less than that. As you can see, this app has a working database, just like the Heroku one did. And the cool thing here is I'm in my own VPC. I can scale. I can use cloud credits. I can configure customizations to my heart's content, even using like my own infrastructure as code and other kinds of Google managed services, managed cloud services alongside what I'm doing without being locked into the Heroku marketplace and having to pay Salesforce tons of money to do anything interesting. So if that sounds attractive to you, we'd be super happy to help you give this all a try, get it working for you. Talk a lot more about this in our docs, linked from right here. And feel free to, ping us there and get in touch if we can help you get the same experience. Thanks for listening and have a great day.